Hello. In my tasting today, I'd like to look at another wine from Sam Neill's Two Paddocks. In fact, I have a number of Two Paddocks wines to look at over the next few days, just to pay a small tribute to Sam Neill, the actor. So this is the 2025 vintage of Schatzi Riesling, Central Otago wine. And Neill grew a small amount of Riesling in the vineyards at his Red Bank farm. He's probably best known for being a lover of Pinot Noir. But when it came to white wines, he said that Riesling was his favourite grape. He had a belief that Central Otago could make great Riesling. He saw other people planting Pinot Gris, but felt that actually, in the long term, Riesling was a finer grape variety and would eventually be seen to be making the better wines in the region. He also said that Rieslings tend to be underpriced and therein gave good value. So I should be able to test that theory as well. Now, the name Schatzi translates from German as sweetheart. And I think it reflects the fact that Neill saw Germany as the spiritual home of Riesling, and Schatzi indicates the fact that this is the medium sweet version. They do also make a dry wine. I wasn't able to get hold of that. It had sold out, as it appears that many of Sam Neill's Two Paddocks wines have done in the intervening time since his passing a couple of weeks ago. So this is an organically grown wine. It's from a single vineyard block, as I say, at the Red Bank Vineyard. It's in Organically, which is in the Alexandra Basin, the most southerly of the subregions of Central Otago. Generally speaking here, the soils are river-deposited, gravelly loams, with the exception of a seam of clay that runs through the southern part of the vineyard. And they've got 5.6 hectares of vines here, 2 hectares of which are planted to Riesling. Now, I've seen a note that says that this particular wine comes from a tiny half-hectare block of clone 110, by which I'm assuming they're meaning the Australian clone Grosset 110, named after the Clare Valley winemaker Geoffrey Grosset, who identified and selected the clone from within his vineyards. The soil for this particular block is described as well-draining schist loam. The notes I've seen suggest, however, there are other clones planted here, and they're named as clone 198 and the Felton Road clone. As far as the climate in Alexandra is concerned, you get hot daytime temperatures throughout the summer that encourage good ripeness and quite rich, ripe stone fruit flavours in Riesling. In the late afternoon, however, you get a cooling wind that they call the Roxbra-Doctor. What happens is you get quite a dramatic drop in temperatures into the evening, ensuring that the nights in Alexandra are significantly cooler, and that helps to retain acidity and delicate aromas in the fruit. As for the 2025 vintage, starting in the spring in 2024, there was above average early rainfall, and there were 2 quite large snow events that occurred in mid-September and late October. As a result, there was a slow start to the spring as the soils were still quite cool, and then a very late frost on the 3rd of November actually caused some damage in some of the other vineyards belonging to Two Paddocks, but not those in the Alexandra Basin. Counterintuitively, the spring in 2024 was actually warmer in 2023 and sat pretty much in the middle of the average range here. Optimum flowering and fruit set were achieved in December, and then warm and settled late summer weather was ideal for the development of flavours in the fruit. The grapes were hand harvested, they were whole bunch pressed, allowed to settle, and the clean juice was put into stainless steel tanks to allow an indigenous fermentation to start with the wild yeasts that had come into the winery of the fruit. Fermentation went ahead quite slowly, with temperatures as low as 14 degrees C. The result of this was that fermentation was long and slow, and long, slow fermentation took somewhere up to 5 weeks. And this cool fermentation helped to preserve the delicate, volatile, floral and citrus fruit aromas into the final wine. Now, as I say, this is a medium sweet wine, and that sweetness was achieved by stopping the fermentation. Something that was done by chilling the wine to shock the yeasts and then filtering them out. Obviously, it's a very careful judgment as to which stage that happens to ensure the correct balance between sugar, alcohol and acidity in the final wine. And Two Paddocks quite deliberately doesn't backblend sweetness into a wine, which is a process that is sometimes applied to give sweetness in these wines. And the result of creating sweetness for a stop fermentation is that the action of the yeasts converts the slightly sweeter grape sugar, fructose, last, tending to leave a more delicate, elegant and fresher sweetness, which is important if you're looking to create a Riesling that will age for a period of time in bottle. This is only the second time that Schatzi's been produced. They made 140 cases, and it's a wine that they suggest you can cellar for up to 10 years. So let's have a look at it, shall we? First thing to say is that we have a wine that is a very pale yellow there. Evidently it's got 11.5% alcohol according to its label. Slowly it's forming some tears on the side of the glass there, but it seems a little reluctant to do so. This is not a sort of a thick, heavy wine. Obviously there's a little sweetness there, but there's not a massive amount of alcohol. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? The aromas are, in the first case, very mineral. There's a liminess, there are floral notes. There's also perhaps a slightly sort of toasty, flinty note, and I think that's an expression of the indigenous fermentation going on there, helping to emphasise that sort of mineral note, the quite pungent lime and citrus blossom notes, and they're having to push their way out past those mineral aromas on the nose. It is delicious though. I'm just talking about liminess. Perhaps there's also a note of quince there. And yes, those sort of slightly toasty, almost gunpowdery fermentation notes are quite prominent as well. So let's have a taste. It's pungent, there's a real freshness there. There's quite a liminess, a slightly waxy liminess. And maybe the first steps towards some quite classic petrol-y notes as well. I think perhaps also that's a question of that sort of slightly toasty element, those fermentation notes. Now this is a wine I'm told has 20 grams per litre of sugar. So personally, I would say this was more medium than medium sweet. And the good acidity and those mineral notes really does give quite a sort of a limey, toasty bite to the finish here, which is lasting really well. For a Riesling, the wine is, I suppose, relatively medium-bodied. I guess it's got 11.5% alcohol, which is just giving a little bit of warmth and roundness to that finish, more so possibly than you would find with this classic medium style of wine from the Moselle or from the Rhine. I guess its richness is probably making me think more about Rieslings from Austria, from the Wachau, or possibly even Alsace. Just the roundness and the richness of the wine's finish are doing that. I think this is an impressive wine. It surprised me somewhat. I was expecting it was going to be a little bit more delicate. It's got a mineral freshness and it's got a toasty intensity that I think certainly support the idea that the wine would age for at least 10 years and possibly longer. Its freshness gives it good length, and its weight would enable it to complement quite a range of foods. I'm just thinking this would be really lovely with quite oily smoked salmon or with goat's milk cheeses, that sort of thing. I was quite surprised by the wine's toothsomeness, but actually it's quite a pleasant surprise. In terms of a score, I looked at the winesearcher aggregated critic score. I can't see a score there yet. Personally, I'd be marking this 93 out of 100. I will leave a link to the winesearcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, so you can see what price it's available at and if it's available for sale near you, and that way you can decide whether this is really offering great value for money. I note that there's another translation of Schatzi, as well as a translation from German as sweetheart. It's sometimes also translated as little gem. I'll leave you to decide for yourself whether you think the pricing makes this a little gem. Certainly, it's a high quality Riesling that I've really enjoyed tasting. So thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you've enjoyed this tasting. If you have, it would be amazing if you could press the like button for me. I'd really appreciate your support in that way. And if you are watching these videos and you'd like to watch more of them, it would be really helpful to me if you could subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, and also you can set yourself an alert and be notified every time I publish a new tasting, so you don't miss any. If you have friends who you think might like to watch the video, I'd be very grateful if you could think about passing it on to them. That'd be a lovely endorsement. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to see those in the comments box below. It would be great to know what you think about the wines I'm looking at, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. So thank you once again for taking the time to watch the video. I have 2 more tastings coming up to commemorate the late Sam Neill and his winemaking in Central Otago, and both of those will be of Two Paddocks Pinot Noirs. So I do hope you'll be able to make some time and come and join me for those. Hopefully we'll see you there. Bye for now.